Starting today, I'm living with my eldest son, his wife, and our grandchildren. We don't need strangers anymore. That's what we decided in a family meeting. From the tone of Matthew's voice, it didn't seem like he was joking. I don't know who you are, but old lady, get out of the house. We're going to work together as a family from now on, so please leave early. There's no room for you anyway. My eldest son, James, and his wife, Mary, said this while making shooing gestures as if mocking me. My anger went beyond my limits. Yet, I calmed down and laughed in front of the three of them. It's ridiculous to stand on the same stage with such people and get angry over provocations. After all, I'm the one paying $3,300 for living expenses, and they forget that and decide to kick me out. What are they planning to do from now on? Got it. I'll divorce you as well. I'll leave as you said. My words made the three of them smirk in a disgusting manner. I then turned around and left the living room, locking myself in my room. Your belongings are trash. Take everything with you, Matthew shouted from the living room. I silently began packing my things without responding. My name is Elizabeth. I am currently 65 years old. I was married to Matthew and had a part-time job, but now I work from home alongside household chores. I met Matthew when he approached me on the street. I was a college student at the time. He fell in love with me at first sight and approached me. Despite being a working adult, 7 years older than me, I had no experience with men and kept my distance from Matthew, full of caution. But Matthew didn't give up and kept talking to me whenever we met. It was often just greetings, but we would chat whenever there was time. Despite my reluctance, I listened, and eventually, he realized I wasn't interested and said to me, I didn't want to bother you. I'm sorry if I made you feel uncomfortable. That made me realize Matthew's sincerity, and I decided to face him. Gradually, I started to be attracted to Matthew as well. After I graduated from college, we got married and were blessed with a daughter, Lisa, and a son, James. Matthew, who loved children, was cooperative in raising our 2 kids, and we lived happily as a family. However, that happiness did not last long. When James entered middle school, I started working part-time again, and it was then I heard something unbelievable. It was a colleague of mine, Emily, who was a year older than me, who told me. We were close in age and we both had children. I felt a kinship and liked her straightforward, caring personality. One day, as we left work at the same time, she mentioned, by the way, I was once approached by a guy at this station. It was the same station where I met Matthew. I thought it was a curious coincidence and listened as Emily continued. A friend of mine was also approached by the same guy. It became a topic among us, and after observing for a while, it turns out he was hitting on various girls. Really? That's surprising. I was shocked too. And he always targeted younger girls, about 5 years younger than him. Emily laughed innocently, so I laughed along. Rumor has it he eventually caught a young girlfriend and got married. At that moment, I had a bad feeling. And I felt embarrassed about how I met Matthew here. He fell in love with me at first sight, and it was just a chance meeting. He is different from those frivolous men. That was what I thought, however, my hope was shattered. And he tells everyone he falls in love at first sight. Poor girls who get tricked into marrying him. Emily kept talking, but nothing reached me. From the moment I realized that man was Matthew, I couldn't think of anything else. I felt pathetic for being deceived by Matthew's words. Of course, I knew Emily meant no harm. She didn't know my husband was Matthew. Elizabeth, you look pale. Emily, noticing I had suddenly gone silent, voiced her concern. Yeah, I'm fine. Just thinking about what to make for dinner tonight. Every day's a struggle, isn't it? I wonder what I should make. I said something out of desperation, but thankfully, it changed the subject. After that, I couldn't stop thinking about it and kept making mistakes at my part-time job from the next day on. Then, after dinner when the kids were asleep, I spoke to Matthew. Today, a friend from work told me something a bit troubling. Troubling? What kind of story? Matthew listened intently to my story. Surely, such a kind husband being the worst kind of frivolous man must be some mistake. I hoped it would be a laughable story. So I started talking, hoping for some reassurance. You know the station where we met, right? There seems to be someone there who falls in love at first sight with younger women. And that person, it seems, got married to one of the women he picked up there. I laughed after saying this, but Matthew didn't laugh at all. Instead of feeling reassured, I felt increasingly crushed by anxiety. My lips quivering, I managed to say, "It's just a coincidence, right? You fell in love with me at first sight, didn't you?" My voice trembled more than I thought it would. Matthew burst out laughing. And my relief was short-lived. There is no such thing as love at first sight. You were just the one who fell for it. He laughed in front of me, trembling. All that person did was cause unnecessary trouble. You would have been happier not knowing. That's terrible. So, you tricked me into marrying you? Was your love for me a lie? I couldn't help raising my voice at Matthew, who kept laughing absurdly. But Matthew, ignoring my feelings, added another hurtful comment. It's your fault for being deceived. I wanted a naive young girl who would fall for it, which is why I chose you. That statement was clear evidence that Matthew was fully aware he had deceived me. Well, someone like you would have ended up with a terrible man eventually. It's good you ended up with me. I'm going to bed now, I have work tomorrow. And with that, he actually lay down in bed. I admit I was foolish, but it was shocking to receive no support in my moment of realization. I thought I was loved, but realizing he didn't care who it was unbearably frustrating. When we went to greet my husband's parents for the wedding, they were relieved he was finally getting married and happy he married someone so young. I thought I was being praised, but Matthew must have been pressured to marry many times before. But now that I know this fact, there's nothing I can do about it. Although I no longer feel love, our marital relationship isn't bad, and with the children at a sensitive age, I can't bring myself to pursue a divorce. The sad and painful reality that I misunderstood love and got married was tough, but I told myself to endure it. Over time, I was able to come to terms with the past is just the past. Even if I no longer felt love for Matthew, there was affection for him as a family member. After learning the truth, our marriage wasn't as good, and Matthew began avoiding me on his days off, opting to gamble instead. Yet, I no longer thought about divorce, and after quitting my part-time job, I started working from home, leading a busy life. Our children grew up quickly, both graduating from college and finding jobs locally. Lisa later married a coworker and now has children. She lives far away, so we don't see each other often, but they're living happily as a family. The problem was James. After graduating from college, he found a job but resigned immediately. That company wasn't for me. The boss dumped all his work on me. The part-timers are useless, just blabbering all day. He complained so much that at first, I simply thought it was a bad fit with the company or the boss. That's tough. Surely, you'll find a company that suits you. I even supported his job change. Thanks to that, James did find another job but resigned again soon after. It was the same pattern over and over. I lost count of how many times he changed jobs before he turned 30. I wanted to defend my child, but at this point, it seemed like he was just being selfish. Full-time employment isn't for me. It's too much responsibility for a little pay. Part-time is enough for me. If a customer or the headquarters annoys me, I can just quit. In the end, James, who had resigned himself to his situation, was still hopping from one part-time job to another. Of course, that wasn't enough to cover his living expenses. He lived at his parents' house, not contributing to food or utilities, using what he earned as pocket money. James, you're over 30. You can't keep living like this forever, can you? I tried to reason with James several times. Even if you're not a full-time employee, you need to stick to one place to get a higher hourly rate, right? Patience is important too. But no matter how much I worried, it was pointless. As for Matthew, well, don't say that. He's our eldest son. We have to support him, he said. It might be okay for now. But isn't he worried about his child's future? Dad really understands, huh? James, spoiled by Matthew, didn't seem to want to quit his part-time lifestyle. Then, at 34, James suddenly said he was moving out. Just when I wondered what the wind had brought, it seems he's planning to get married. And he's found a full-time job. Actually, she's pregnant. So I've got to step up, James told me. I was overjoyed. Of course, I was worried about James. I felt a sense of relief that my son was getting married and the joy of having a grandchild. James's partner turned out to be Mary, who is 7 years younger than him. Since Matthew and I also have a 7-year age difference. Blood is thicker than water, huh? James laughed. Mary was to come over to our house to greet us. Nice to meet you. Please take care of me. For a gift, she brought Matthew's favorite cake, presumably having asked James about it, and her attire was clean, leaving a good first impression. Mary, looking forward to getting along. I greeted her with a smile, and Mary smiled back. It wasn't a smile. I felt a sense of discomfort as if she was provoking me somehow and tilted my head. Oh, sorry. Just remembered a love at first sight story. A love at first sight story? Contrary to my confusion, Matthew and James started laughing vulgarly. Haha. The story where Mom got fooled? What, James? You already told her? I was going to tell her myself. It was about how Matthew and I met. I didn't even know James knew about it, let alone that he had told Mary. I was so embarrassed my face could catch fire, but at the same time, I felt a disdain for the three of them. Mary smiled triumphantly again and opened her mouth towards me. I'm definitely loved by James, so please don't worry. Is that something you say to your future mother-in-law, even if it's just the first meeting? No, maybe she said it to keep me in check, because I'm going to be the mother-in-law. Mary, you're an interesting girl. Beautiful too, must be popular, right? Dad, with a wife like Elizabeth, you're in good hands, right? Then I'm relieved. I'll do my best to be a wonderful wife. The three of them started chatting, leaving me astonished on the sidelines. I didn't miss how Mary snorted at me. She made it seem like she had James and Matthew on her side, putting herself above me. Mary was all about appearances, embodying the worst traits of a woman. James and Mary then started living together in an apartment not too far from our house. Despite her being such a person, if James is happy getting married, then that's all that matters to me. They soon had a baby. A healthy girl. I need to work even harder from now on, I thought just when an incident occurred. It happened one day when I returned from shopping for dinner. I heard a baby crying from inside the house. James's family must have come over, I thought, and hurried inside. As expected, James, Mary, and my granddaughter had come. "Oh, you're here? You should have let me know." Delighted, I put down my bags and rushed to my granddaughter. Then, Mary said to me in a chilly voice, "Who are you?" "What?" I was stunned. I couldn't understand what was happening. James laughed vulgarly at her words. Amidst this, Matthew said seriously, "Starting today, I'm living with my eldest son, his wife, and our grandchildren. We don't need strangers anymore. That's what we decided in a family meeting." "What?" Judging by the tone of Matthew's voice, it didn't seem like a joke. "I don't know who you are, old lady, but you need to leave the house. We'll work together as a family from now on, so please leave soon. There's no room for you," Mary said, mocking me, while gesturing me away with her hand. "It's like we got married by mistake." And with Matthew's words, the three of them started laughing vulgarly again, pushing my anger beyond its limit. There's no way I should be ridiculed this much. However, I calmed down and laughed off in front of them. Being on the same stage with such people and getting angry at their provocations is just foolish. After all, I'm the one paying $3,300 for living expenses, and to think they'd forget that and try to kick me out. What exactly do they plan to do from now on? Got it. We'll get a divorce then. I'll leave just as you said. To my words, the three of them put on a sickeningly sweet smile. I turned around and left the living room, locking myself in my room. "All your stuff is trash, so take it all with you," Matthew yelled from the living room. Without responding, I quietly started packing my belongings. The next day, I called the movers. It was a slow weekday, so they could move my stuff in the evening. "Please, as soon as possible." I replied immediately and decided to move out that day. I wanted to get out of that house as fast as possible. That was my only thought. Watching me hurry to leave, Matthew said with a laugh, "Where does an unemployed old lady think she's going? I would have forgiven you if you apologized." I completely ignored his words. I didn't understand why I should apologize when there was no reason to. "I'll be out of the way of the movers, so I'm off to the casino." Continually ignored by me, Matthew left the house after noon. I thought it would have been nice to hear a thank you for everything up until now, but expecting anything from him is foolish. Right. Then, goodbye," I said, watching Matthew leave the house. A few hours later, thanks to the movers, all my belongings were moved out. I contacted the real estate agent, got the keys, and completed the move. While there's still a bit of unpacking to do, I was relieved to have safely moved. All that's left is to fill out and submit the divorce papers, and I'll be officially free. Lying on the couch, feeling liberated, my mobile phone rang. It was Matthew. "Hello?" As I answered, Matthew shouted angrily from the other end. "What is this? What are you thinking?" His sudden shouting made me pull the phone away from my ear. After a moment, I said, "What? What are you so angry about? Don't play dumb. What kind of harassment is this? You took all the furniture and appliances. The house is empty." I played dumb at his words. Then, I slowly looked around the room. This room is filled with furniture and appliances I brought from the house. But there's nothing strange about that. What's wrong with that? You said not to leave any personal belongings behind, didn't you? What? That's right. All the furniture and appliances used in that house were bought with my money, so they're my personal belongings. You thought they were yours? I chose and bought them with my money. I laughed heartily. On the other end, Matthew was speechless, making a choked sound. You said such things because James and Mary were there, thinking you could kick me out, but you didn't see reality. I'll give you the appliances, Matthew said desperately, but I didn't miss those words. Give them to me? I'm telling you they're mine. Don't get ahead of yourself. Matthew fell silent again at my scolding. I could almost laugh out loud seeing his reaction. Shut up! Anyway, this ends our relationship. Don't ever contact me again. And with that, he hung up. Ironically, it was Matthew who had called me, but after being outwitted, he seemed to have forgotten he was the one who called. I couldn't stop laughing alone in my new home. I don't take his "don't contact me again" seriously, but I need to get him to fill out the divorce papers, so I will have to contact him. It's annoying, but I plan to go back to the house once I've gotten the documents. Walking with a heavy heart, I stopped when I heard someone calling me. Elizabeth. It is you, isn't it? Emily. It was Emily, with whom I had gotten along while working a part-time job. Though I had her contact and we met a few times after I quit, we hadn't seen each other at all in recent years. But a reunion after so many years is a joyous occasion. We decided to catch up a bit, so we went into a nearby cafe. After reminiscing about old times, Emily asked, "Did you have something to do today?" I told her everything in response to her question. It turns out, I was the one who had fallen for the frivolous man Emily warned me about and got married, and then was kicked out of the house by my husband and his son and wife. Contrary to my laughter, Emily felt down on my behalf. "I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have said anything." She looked remorseful, but I was actually grateful. I was shocked when I found out, and I was too embarrassed and ashamed to talk about it before, but now I'm glad I know. I could have ended my life being ridiculed. Of course, I wasn't lying about my feelings. There were times when I thought I would have been happier not knowing, but that's only if Matthew had been able to reflect on his past. Considering Matthew's personality, not knowing would have just made me more of a fool. Being able to take action while I still can is thanks to learning about Matthew's true nature back then. By the way, did you have something to do as well? After my question, Emily started talking after a moment's thought. Actually, it's about my son. Your son? Didn't you have a daughter? After I quit the part-time job, I had another child. I came here today for a free legal consultation about him. From her story, it seems there's some trouble with someone. While thinking every family has its issues, we talked about various things before parting ways. When I got back home, my son's family was there. It seems they were moving stuff in. Hey! What's this about taking the furniture and appliances? Are you out of your mind? They really intend to live together. The two of them glared at me. Where the large refrigerator used to be, there was now a small one, probably used in their apartment. I couldn't help but laugh at its cuteness. What's so funny? Nothing. Mary seemed to have understood why I laughed and snapped at me, agitated. I skillfully dodged her attack and spoke to James. Where's Matthew? In the bedroom. Don't make a lot of noise, our daughter is sleeping. According to James, Matthew was apparently babysitting his granddaughter. He did take care of the kids quite well when they were little. That was when I still felt happiness. Thinking back on those times, I headed to the bedroom. I've brought the divorce papers. Leave them here after you write them. As soon as I entered the bedroom, I said that. Matthew glanced at me, clicked his tongue, and quietly stood up. He was in the middle of cutting the nails of the granddaughter he had put to bed. I was having my moment of peace, but the old lady had to ruin it. Muttering complaints under his breath, he snatched the divorce papers from me. Ignoring Matthew, I looked at my granddaughter's face. She may be the child of my pathetic son, but she's my blood-related granddaughter. My feelings of her being adorable are genuine. But, looking down at her with a smile, I was shocked by what I saw. A small, adorable face. It looked exactly like Emily, whom I had just met. Then, I remembered what Emily had told me earlier. The trouble with her son's girlfriend involved her lying about getting an abortion to scam money and then disappearing. I thought every family has its troubles after Emily's story. But now, I wondered if Mary was the one who scammed Emily's son. That's what I thought. If my suspicions were correct, then this child might not be James's. Thinking about this with a pale face, Matthew spoke to me.
Here, I've written it. Now leave.
Okay.
And take this with you. Well, you probably won't see this child again, so you might as well keep it.
Matthew handed me a tissue wrapped around the granddaughter's nails along with the divorce papers. I silently took them and quickly left the house. Then, I hurriedly contacted Emily again. A month later, my cell phone rang. It was Matthew again.
Hey! I got a notification about unpaid electricity and gas bills. What's the deal?
Again, he was irrationally angry, taking his frustration out on me. I don't know.
Pay it yourself. Where has the money been coming from until now? Where's the debit card?
Large footsteps could be heard. He must be turning the house upside down looking for the debit card. Seeing Matthew in a panic, I couldn't help but laugh.
What are you laughing at? Hurry up and come here. I can't make heads or tails of the house because you messed it up.
Matthew retorted and then hung up the phone. Though I wasn't keen on it, there was something I had to attend to. I reluctantly made a call to someone. That night, I rang the doorbell of the house.
You're late. What were you doing, you freeloader?
Matthew, who rushed out from the entrance, froze upon seeing the person next to me. Who's this?
A friend of mine.
It's been a while. Emily greeted him deliberately. However, Matthew just tilted his head.
You don't remember the face of a girl you approached on the street, do you?
Emily said with a laugh. I laughed along. Matthew looked uncomfortable and glared at me.
What kind of harassment is this? Bringing a girl I approached thinking it would bother me? I wouldn't do something so childish. I came here because I have business with Mary.
Let's go in. I entered the house with Emily. As expected, James and his wife were in the living room, seeming quite at ease in my absence. Both made faces as if bothered by my visit, but I didn't want to come any more than necessary. So, you're Mary. Emily started speaking upon seeing Mary.
Huh? Who? A friend of yours? Why are you bringing strangers to our house?
Mary snapped back at Emily. Emily looked incredulous but quickly responded.
I've been looking for you. It was hard to find you since you changed your last name after getting married. Hey, what do you want with Mary?
James stood up. Then, Emily handed an envelope to James. With a puzzled look, James took out the documents inside.
What's this? A genetic lab?
James read the name on the documents, which included Emily's son's name. The moment Mary heard that name, she turned pale, stood up, and snatched the documents and envelope from James.
What's that, Mary? You shouldn't be looking at someone else's mail.
Her voice was clearly shaken. Mary seemed to know about Emily and the contents of that letter.
We had a DNA test done between my son and Mary's daughter. What? Your child is my son's child. Unfortunately, there's no blood relation to James.
With Emily's words, James turned pale and froze. Mary remained motionless, also pale. What do you mean?
Matthew, who had been silent, cut into our conversation. I said with a smile, "Your granddaughter's nails you gave me? They were put to good use." That's right. I had handed the granddaughter's nails that Matthew had pushed onto me to Emily. And I told her that the granddaughter looked just like Emily. Mary was being rude and ungrateful. Scamming people for abortion money isn't beyond her. Emily secretly sent her son's hair and the granddaughter's nails I gave her to a testing facility. And it was proven there was a parent-child relationship between them. However, Emily hasn't told her son about this yet. Emily's son has been very worried about the baby that might have been born, and telling him now would make him restless. Before anything happened that could shock her son, Emily wanted to confirm the situation herself.
There must be some mistake. That child isn't mine?
Hearing the truth, James was in despair.
Poor thing, tricked into marriage. You misunderstood being loved.
Emily spoke to James. It was the same thing Mary had said to me. Being tricked into marriage by Matthew. It was ironic that James received the same comment.
My granddaughter wasn't even mine.
Matthew seemed shocked and crouched down.
The child will be taken care of by our family. There will probably be a court case.
Wait. Not that.
Given you're about to be divorced, and without a job, how will you raise her? And yes, return the abortion money. It's all gone.
Mary clung to Emily's arm, crying.
I'm sorry. Please forgive me.
Emily spoke to Mary gently, as if consoling her. You pushed Elizabeth out and snuck into this family with lies. Do you think you can be forgiven? Despite her kind face, Emily's cold words left Mary unable to argue, only crying louder.
And what about the debit card?
I turned back to Matthew and said. Matthew looked dazed, his eyes empty. Before the grandchild was born.
My son's grandchild. My hope for living.
Matthew used to be excited. Now, that was gone. I understood the shock. But I pressed on with an even harsher reality.
The debit card is only with you. There's no other. No way. Then how have we been managing the living expenses until now? Isn't there a bank account for utilities and living expenses?
I was the one covering the living expenses. Every month, $3,300. Of course, I have no intention of doing so anymore. My words made James look up. Matthew's eyes darted around in confusion. Yes. $3,300. Every month, unbeknownst to Matthew, who then exclaimed in surprise.
What? You didn't know? Well, you were spending freely, after all.
Matthew looked up at the sky, perhaps reflecting on his actions. Thinking he hadn't been caught. He knew about the gambling debts, taking money out of the food budget when short. The money I set aside for bills disappearing wasn't a 1 or 2 time occurrence. Thought you hadn't been caught? Your wasteful spending was driving up our living expenses. Matthew retorted defiantly at my words.
Even so, there must have been some bank account with savings or bonuses. Such things you took out years ago and spent it all at the casino. Don't you remember?
Faced with the truth, Matthew looked shocked. He must have forgotten. And thought it still existed. I sighed in frustration. I had been quietly covering for his expenses with my money.
Do you realize now, after trying to kick me out, how much you depended on me? Live with that regret. Lies. How could a poor person like you have that kind of money?
Matthew yelled, refusing to accept the truth. Talking further seemed pointless.
If you can't believe it, then fine.
I shifted my gaze to James. That goes with you, too, James. Huh?
James, disheartened by Mary and his daughter's situation, looked at me with vacant eyes.
You've been hopping from part-time job to part-time job, not contributing to the household. You've been living off my money, and after kicking me out, have you thought about what will happen? Dad's savings are zero. You might still be able to work now, but how long do you think that will last considering your age?
James seemed to realize the gravity of the situation, trembling as if he'd seen something terrifying.
You might have thought living costs would decrease by having me back like when you were single, but you're mistaken if you think you can live the same life after driving me away.
No one responded after that. Only Emily gave me a satisfied pat on the shoulder.
I'm glad I could say what I wanted to. Shall we go then? Yes. Mary, I'll be in touch.
As Emily and I were about to leave, James called out to me.
Mom, where are you living now? Living alone must be hard, right? You can come back if you want.
A contrived smile. Calling Mom for the first time in decades. He was trying to appease me. I could see through his dirty intentions and replied with a slight smile.
Not at all. I'm living in a high-rise condo now. It's more comfortable than here. A high-rise condo. Yes. Bought it for $1 million. Don't worry, if anything happens to me, it's arranged to go to Lisa, so I won't be a burden to James.
James and Matthew exchanged glances at that amount. And Matthew stared at me, forgetting to blink.
A $1 million high-rise condo. Where the hell did you get that kind of money? Could it be you're actually rich? Huh?
Emily tilted her head in confusion at those words.
Your family doesn't know you're a popular novelist? I never told them because I thought they'd just make fun of me. Looks like the one that got away was a whale.
As Emily and I laughed together, Matthew and James stopped me with a change in their demeanor.
Look, Elizabeth, I was wrong. You've been doing such amazing work and I never realized, never gave you credit. I truly regret it. So, won't you come back?
Their sudden turnaround was nauseating. They pleaded with such ingratiating tones, as if begging me.
Mom, to be able to live in such a place, you must be incredible. Come back. If not, could you at least help with the living expenses? Please. I was just deceived by that woman, isn't that pitiful?
James said this, pointing at the disheartened Mary. Mary shivered but seemed to have no fight left in her, sitting by her sleeping child without moving. I felt a bit sorry for her, but after all, she brought this upon herself and I had no intention of helping.
Poor thing, deceived into marriage.
I turned my gaze back to James and said,
So, therefore, you have to figure it out yourself, right? It's your own fault for being deceived.
With those words I've heard so many times before, I pushed Matthew and James away. They seemed to finally realize they were being abandoned by me, slumping onto the sofa in shock.
Well then.
I cheerfully bid farewell and left the house. My family, who had shown no interest in me. They never believed me when I said I was paying, always treated me like a poor person. They ridiculed me for working from home, never knowing I was a novelist. That I made money from royalties and invested in real estate. Being praised for my work by such people now meant nothing to me. In fact, I wanted nothing to do with them. Mary, who deceived me and drove me out, and James and Matthew, who lost their family and hope due to their continuous ridicule. They were probably a family of similar stripes, I thought with a laugh. After that, Mary and James divorced. Mary, having no place to go, was somehow allowed to stay in the house. Matthew and James, despite everything, couldn't abandon the small baby. Mary must be living there feeling very constrained. James ended up quitting his job again.
Seemingly thinking he no longer had a wife and child to support, he forgot he now had to take care of his father. How the two will live in that poor house. I hope they reflect on their actions and manage their lives. Later, Emily and her son filed a lawsuit against Mary and successfully won custody of the daughter. Emily's son, though an unmarried father, tearfully thanked me for winning the custody. Emily, too, is gearing up for parenting from scratch. I envy having something to strive for at this age. Meanwhile, I need to get to work too, turning on my computer, thinking about my next novel's plot. Perhaps a story about a woman who turns her life around after getting married and finds happiness. While looking at the night view from my beautiful condo, that's what I thought.